We're seeing a barrage of rockets in the skies over Israel and Gaza right now. We have not seen anything quite like this before, or heard it for that matter. The rocket sirens are sounding in the area near Tel Aviv. Trey Yingst is live in southern Israel with the latest. Trey.
Yeah, guys, just a few minutes ago, we saw rockets coming off of the northern part of the Gaza Strip. I want to just show you on my phone here the alerts that came in. All of these cities had people heading to bomb shelters, and the list just goes on and on. It's an indication that Hamas and Islamic Jihad, despite the heavy airstrikes that you heard earlier in the hour across the northern part of Gaza, have maintained their capability to fire on major population centers. We asked the defense minister about this earlier today, and he didn't have a clear answer on why that is the case. We do understand from our previous reporting and intelligence officials we've talked to in Israel that the factions inside Gaza have around 15,000 rockets. So eventually they will run low on their supplies. Over the past several days, we've actually seen them reduce fire at night. Initial reports from the Israeli military after the first few days of this conflict, and you can hear the Israeli fighter jets overhead, likely headed to their next target in Gaza. But the initial reports in the early days of this conflict were that Hamas and Islamic Jihad reduced their fire to 200 to 400 rockets a day. Still, it is enough fire to threaten the communities along the border. And in addition to that, there have been infiltration attempts, not just in the northern, but also the eastern border between Israel and Gaza. And it's been incredibly difficult for the troops and civilians. That was a huge airstrike right now along the Gaza border. It just shakes the ground here. But it really gives you a sense that they are trying to target as many of the different positions. You just see another one there in the distance. There's a soldier walking behind me. They're using this hill to scope out much of the area and also correct their fire. That's how close we are to Gaza, bringing you this story. We've also seen some images from inside the Gaza Strip that show the aftermath and the explosions from the inside, and it is significant damage being done to the northern part of Gaza. Remember, it was last week the Israelis started to warn civilians to head south of Wadi Gaza, the valley that separates the northern part of Gaza from the southern part of Gaza. I'm texting tonight with a civilian inside Gaza. He says they can hear the strikes, but their location is okay, indicating the Israelis are focusing their efforts, their strikes, and their artillery on the northern part of the Strip.
Trey, and we can see over your right shoulder, we saw that flash right when you said that there was a strike. So our viewers are able to see that as you're speaking. But you sent out at 9:57 a.m. I want to underscore that's more than 3 hours ago. 9:57 a.m. nonstop strikes against northern Gaza. So has this been going on for 3 hours?
Yeah, it's been going on for 3 hours. And as I'm talking to you here, we're getting more updates, and I'm texting people inside Gaza to get an idea of what they're seeing. A lot of the civilians have moved south. They took these warnings seriously, and they were given flyers from the air that were dropped by the Israelis, and I actually picked one up and meant to show it to you guys earlier, and I'm going to pull it out here now. The flyers that were dropped by Israel have instructions on them telling people where to go. And the wind actually floated one of these flyers here to this location, and I meant to show it to you earlier, but it's been quite an active night. You can actually see this is a flyer that the Israelis tried to drop in Gaza. The wind took a few of them over to this location along the border. But there's a map of the Gaza Strip here, and remember, Gaza is 25 miles long, and they are calling on all civilians to move to the southern part of the Strip. This little corner here, it says humanitarian aid zone. And we haven't been able to confirm that they're actually delivering any aid to that specific location. But again, according to that source inside Gaza, and all the writing is in Arabic so that people in Gaza can understand the Palestinian population there of more than 2 million people. But again, the sources that we are talking to indicate there are not airstrikes just south of Khan Yunis in the middle part of Gaza. So this is a specific effort by the Israelis to hammer the northern part of the Strip and try to soften the target ahead of what is expected to be a ground operation in the coming hours or days. We simply don't have that information, and we won't be able to confirm that a ground operation has started until it does.
Trey, it's Emily. Those leaflets called to mind what the United States dropped in southern Iraq in early October 2002. I was just looking at them at the CIA on Friday. I wanted to ask you a question about after your meeting this morning. You said that there were many things off the record. You told us about the talking points, however, that you were able to share. What did that leave you with in terms of a feeling after this meeting, off the record? Did you feel confidence? Did you feel more relief? Did you feel a sense of can you describe that in conjunction with what you are now seeing right now?
Look, we're focused on gathering as many facts on the ground as we can from Israel and also from inside Gaza. I think leaving the meeting today with the defense minister, we got a lot of new information, and it's been challenging to parse through what we can use. I've been in contact with intelligence sources and also defense ministry sources because it's such sensitive information. We didn't just hear from the defense minister himself, but he actually showed us some more video that I hadn't seen before, gruesome, graphic video of October 7th, the massacre here in southern Israel that we've covered extensively, really to explain why this is taking place. We also looked at a map that I'm going to describe, but we can't show you again because it's classified, showing the tunnels that the groups inside Gaza, Hamas and Islamic Jihad, have dug beneath critical infrastructure inside Gaza. And that's one of their biggest concerns, is that the tunnels are going to be used to ambush the troops when they enter. And so my biggest takeaway from that meeting was the concern by the highest person in the Israeli military, the defense minister, Yoav Gallant, for his forces, because he understands there will be casualties on the ground when the Israelis do enter. They will be immediately ambushed by Hamas and Islamic Jihad fighters. There are thousands of them throughout the Gaza Strip. They have tunnels, they have IEDs, they have roadside bombs. They will use suicide vests, small arms, RPGs that they are actually making inside Gaza. Remember, we brought you that story showing you the images. And so we could hear that come in, so I just stopped talking so you could hear it in the distance. The explosions here along the border are, again, the heaviest that we have heard since this war began 21 days ago. But despite these strikes, and again, significant strikes against Gaza, and explosions, artillery, and also naval shelling, they've not been able to stop the rocket fire. And even tonight, hundreds of thousands of Israelis heading to bomb shelters, understanding that they remain under threat. And inside Gaza, similar fears from Palestinian civilians who are trapped amid the crossfire. And that is the complicated environment that the Israelis are dealing with. They know they will be fighting a war from civilian territory, and it will be against an enemy that is not afraid to die.
Trey, it's Dagan McDowell. Where you are along the border with Gaza, but in Israel, have all the Israeli civilians in that area, have they completely cleared out? How far inland are they? Do you encounter anyone on a day-to-day basis who is not involved with the military and the IDF?
That's a great question. In this area, the town that we're in, and I'm being careful with locations and names just given how sensitive tonight is, but only 10% of the population remained a week ago when we asked a local official about this information. In terms of today, there are not many shops in this area open. There are a few soldiers around and a few civilians that are refusing to leave despite the closed military zone starting at the edge of this community and going south along the Gaza border. We've seen a few local residents watching these strikes, but many of these towns near to Gaza are ghost towns. There's an understanding that this is one of the most significant wars Israel has faced in the country's history. The massacre that took place on October 7th is being described by officials, civilians alike, as the darkest day in Israel's history. This is an incredibly challenging moment for the entire country. They are facing an active war here on the southern front. You've seen the airstrikes live behind me, the rocket fire toward major population centers, but also the north, the northern front with Lebanon and Hezbollah, an organization that has precision-guided missiles, hundreds of thousands of missiles, and they're all aimed at the Jewish state. And remember, a few years ago, we sat down with then Defense Minister Benny Gantz, a man who is now in the war cabinet, a former opposition leader, but someone who has now joined this government in part in the war cabinet. And he showed us a map of all of the launching positions across southern Lebanon. And we couldn't show you the map because it was a classified document, but let me describe it to you. If you were to take a piece of paper and it had a map of Lebanon on it, and you took a red marker and you just made as many dots as possible in southern Lebanon. That's what the map looked like. It was hard to see the terrain beneath because there were so many launching points. And the Israelis know that the real concern is not the rocket fire from Hamas and Islamic Jihad. It's the missile fire from Hezbollah. We've brought you these stories, talking with Western intelligence sources who showed us evidence of the Iranian regime smuggling weapons from Iranian territory through Iraq and Syria on the ground and then into Lebanon, and also flying them into Damascus and Aleppo and then smuggling them into southern Lebanon, into the hands of Hezbollah. And those weapons they have one purpose: to fire them at Israel. And that's the real concern for the top military leadership in this country.
You know, Trey, I want to emphasize something you said at the beginning of the program, which is the psychological impact this has on civilians in Israel. A colleague of mine, former colleague, is in Tel Aviv, and he said in his area, it says you get an alert, you have 90 seconds to take cover. And he said it's hard to determine what the best thing to do for your child is. He has a 6-year-old. Do you allow them some normalcy, like walking to the park, knowing that at any moment you could be at the park? You get an air raid siren, and you've got 90 seconds. Describe for me what it's like there for civilians.
It reminds me of the early days of Ukraine, when the Russians invaded, and how the entire population was experiencing a collective trauma. Israel is at war, but the war is not just physical here along the border. The minds of the Israeli people are traumatized. They watched their countrymen be slaughtered. People were killed in their homes as they were resting on Shabbat, a Saturday morning that was supposed to be a peaceful, quiet day. And it turned into the bloodiest massacre this country has ever seen. And just to give you an example, and I think he'll be okay with me sharing this, our cameraman's grandson, he dressed up as a soldier. And he just wanted to, his father came home from reserve duty, and he wanted to show him that he was supporting him. And he's just a young child, and it just gives you a sense. We've seen so many of these. I think this war plays out on the minds of children more than anything. We met this other little child named Raphael, and he was pretending to be a police officer. He said he wanted to do anything he could to help his country at war.
Wow. Raphael, those little children, they are in our prayers because they are affected by all of this too. Trey Yingst, great stuff. Thank you very much.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.